For over 20 years, I have been a pediatric rehabilitation physician. I'm in the specialty of medicine that manages the healthcare needs of children with disabilities. One of the hardest parts of my job is confirming parents' suspicions that their child is not developing quite typically, and then putting a name to that condition. It's so difficult for parents to hear something named, and so the first time they hear it relating to their child, there's shock, and then there's sadness, and often that is followed by fear. Fear of what's to come. Will my child walk? Will my child talk? Will my child be able to learn? But most importantly, will my child be happy? Our desire for our children to be happy is so fundamental. There are entire books written on the subject. And so parents want to know, are these children happier than these children? To answer this question, I turn to the medical literature, and there is a body of information about this very subject of happiness and disability. One very interesting study gathered hundreds of children with cerebral palsy, and they gave them a survey asking them about quality of life and life satisfaction and happiness. And then they gathered hundreds of children who did not have a disability and gave them the same survey, and they compared the scores. And what they found was there was no difference in happiness levels between children with disabilities and those without disabilities. Some children are more satisfied in some aspects of their lives and less satisfied in other aspects of their lives. But the scores did not differ by severity of disability. Now, this is surprising to a lot of people. Indeed, it's surprising to researchers. And so some of the people that have done these comparative studies have tried to boil it down. One group coined the phrase, the disability paradox, to try to explain what they saw as a contradiction. Another group of researchers said, how can this be true when people with disabilities lead such an undesirable daily existence? But people with disabilities do not see their daily existence as undesirable. Indeed, happiness and disability often do live together in the same person, and so I can reassure parents that these children are just as happy as these children. And I've noticed a couple of things that are common among the parents who successfully raise happy children. They set expectations and they don't assume incompetence. So even though a child with a disability may walk differently than the other children in the family, or may not speak as clearly as the other children, or has limited hand use, it does not exempt them from being a fully participating member of the family. So if the children without a disability have chores, then the children with a disability has chores. And they may modify those chores a little bit for the child's ability, but the expectations are the same. These parents allow their children to fail. One mother told me how difficult it was to watch her daughter learn to tie her shoes. The mother showed her the technique, and then day after day, the daughter would struggle because she had limited hand function, and it was very difficult for her. But the mother would watch her every day until the child became completely frustrated, and then the mother would tie her shoes, until one day, she got her shoes tied. The mother was amazed because the girl did not use the technique the mother showed her. She developed her own technique, but she got her shoes tied. Children can be incredibly creative if parents are able to stand back and let them fail. These parents give their child autonomy. I have a 15-year-old patient who desperately wanted to go to his high school dance. His mother was like, absolutely not. You cannot go, because he had never really been away from her. She had always been there to protect him. He went to school alone, but nowhere else. But he persisted in asking, and finally, she allowed it. So he went to the dance. And there were some disappointing moments, but he had a lot of fun. It wasn't what he thought it would be, but it wasn't what she feared it would be either. He came home from the dance, self-esteem intact. And most importantly, it was what he wanted. Now, I told you a few minutes ago that people with disabilities have the same happiness levels as people without disabilities, but there is one thing that changes that, and that is a lack of autonomy. People want to be able to have a say in the direction of their lives. And when that is taken away from people with disabilities, it leads to a great amount of dissatisfaction. That mother gave her son autonomy, and it made him very happy. These parents balance hope and reality. In rehabilitation medicine, we do not believe in false hope. All hope is real hope. But sometimes persisting with hope can be detrimental to the child. So I had a patient who, for the first 10 years of his life, his mother spent hours a week trying to get him to learn to walk. Hours of physical therapy in a clinic, followed by hours of exercises at home. By the age of about 4, it was quite clear that this child's brain was not going to be able to incorporate the task of walking. And I knew how important this was to the mother. And so I talked to her in clinic, and I told her this. But she was not ready to accept that, and so she persisted. By the age of about 10, this little boy was developing severe behavior problems. And as we explored this with him, we learned that he knew he was disappointing his mother. He knew how desperately she wanted him to be able to walk, and he was not going to be able to do it. So parents who learn to balance hope and reality recognize that can't is not a bad word. We all have can'ts. But when there's a can't that significantly impairs your life, you find a workaround. So for the little boy who couldn't walk, a wheelchair is simply a workaround. And parents who are looking for workarounds will ask me or their therapist. They'll ask other parents. And when they don't see a workaround, sometimes parents innovate, develop the workaround, and then share it with the rest of us. These parents clean up their language. Something as simple as whether you use legs to walk or wheels to get around can be charged with negative connotation. It's often said that people who use a wheelchair are wheelchair bound, but they are not bound by their wheelchair. I wear contact lenses. Without them, I can't see. I can't drive, I can't see faces, I can't read. My contact lenses liberate me. They allow me to live a full life. And so it is for a person whose legs don't walk. Without a wheelchair, they are bedbound. But with a wheelchair, they can fully participate in everything they want to do. I'm not spectacle bound, and they are not wheelchair bound. I wear contacts, they use a wheelchair. It's neutral language. And parents begin to hear these negative phrases in our language, and they relanguage themselves, and they help their friends to relanguage themselves. And in doing so, they begin to destigmatize the language we use around disability. These parents allow themselves to grieve the loss of the child they thought they were going to have. It doesn't mean they love the child they have any less, but they acknowledge their lost expectations. Early in my career, I would give the diagnosis to parents, and we would sit together and process what this meant. And I would explain to them what I thought the future might hold for the child, and then I would think, okay, we've had that conversation, and I assumed we would revisit other issues on subsequent visits. But I was soon to learn that we would revisit that topic many times throughout the child's development. As children grow up, they achieve milestones, and they have big things happen in their lives, and when parents talk about these things, those who have a child with a disability are faced with the reality that their child might not meet those milestones. And so, in acknowledging their loss, they also embrace their new normal. They see their child in all the beauty and fullness of who that child is. They talk about their child's accomplishments, and they celebrate their child's milestones. And they raise children for whom the disability is not the central focus. It's one aspect of who they are, but it by no means defines them. These parents love, respect, and accept their children, and so their children love, respect, and accept themselves, and lead happy and fulfilling lives. Thank you.